We are reflecting on the month of Kartik in 1972, when His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada brought an assembly of devotees from various places in the world, the Americas, Europe, England, Australia, various parts of India. We're at the Samadhi Mandir and Patan Kutir of Srila Rupa Goswami. He gave a series of lectures for 1 month on the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which he had really recently translated into English as the Nectar of Devotion. Could anyone hear? Hare Krishna. It seems like Krishna is protecting those devotees. We were speaking yesterday about the beautiful, infinitely sweet hero's welcome when Lord Sri Krishna returned to Vrindavan after conquering all of the Asura throughout the world. How infinitely sweet was this occasion when Srila Prabhupada returned to Vrindavan. He left with 5 boxes of the Srimad Bhagavatam. When he returned, there were millions of his books in circulation and being read. He left alone. He returned with disciples and followers all over the world, and many had come to join him in Vrindavan. When he left, he was practically penniless. No money, no resources, no one to help him. He returned with wonderful temples on so many continents. When he left, he was wondering, how will anybody in these foreign lands understand the message of Lord Chaitanya? When he returned, there were thousands and thousands of devotees from foreign lands surrendering their lives and even sacrificing everything to follow the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Maharaj. How could we imagine when Srila Prabhupada would bathe in the Yamuna, meditating on the order of his spiritual master, and now he's watching as devotees the world are blissfully bathing in Mother Yamuna. He had been helplessly praying to his Guru Maharaj and Srila Rupa Goswami to empower him. This was at a time his books were not even published. There wasn't a clue of how he could ever go overseas. He didn't have a passport. He didn't have a visa, but he was praying for the mercy of Srila Rupa Goswami. And now wonderful devotees from all around were gathered at Rupa Goswami's Samadhi to hear his teachings. And this yatra that we are gathered to celebrate is another small expansion and offering to that great miracle of love, that great miracle of compassion. And Srila Prabhupada, with his pure, transcendental Vaishnava qualities, he was so deeply grateful to everyone and anyone who was willing to receive his message and help him share it with the world. We celebrate not only in our gratitude to Srila Prabhupada, but in our gratitude to Srila Prabhupada, our gratitude to all those who he is grateful to. And I believe that happens to be everyone here. Vansha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namon. We have come together at Govardhan Hill, Shri Giriraj. Tomorrow is Govardhan Puja. In the evening, with Giriraj's mercy and your blessings, we will try to narrate that wonderful story wherein Krishna convinces the Brajavasis to take all of the paraphernalia for their annual Indra Puja and offer it to the cows, the Brahmins, and Govardhan Hill. And when the offering was made, Krishna manifested an enormous form that stood on top of Govardhan Hill. And with a thunderous voice, he proclaimed, "I am Govardhan." And the cowherd boy Krishna, standing with the Brajavasis, he bowed down to his own form as Giriraj. And Krishna personally taught all people for all time to come how to worship Govardhan Hill. Wonderful offerings of bhoga, anakuta, flowers, serving the Brahmins, serving the devotees of the Lord, offering the greatest satisfaction to the cows. And he led the parikrama, the circumambulation. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Giriraj about 4,500 years later, when he first saw Govardhan Hill, he offered his Dandavat prostrated obeisances. And the first stone that he saw in the Mahabhav of Srimati Radharani, he embraced that rock of Govardhan, knowing that this is the Satchidananda Vigraha, the body of Krishna. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, a gopi who our acharyas declare to be Srimati Radharani proclaims Giriraj to be Haridasvarya, the best of all devotees. Many great souls, Uddhav, Yudhisthira, are called upon as Haridas. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur in Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, he describes that a higher title than being a great queen or king, a higher accomplishment than even conquering the worlds, greater wealth than accumulating massive property and money is to be Das, to be a servant of the Lord. When our gurus give us the name Das, we may think everybody's getting that name, and the name before it is a name of Krishna or a place of Krishna's or a devotee of Krishna or something or someone connected to Krishna. But most important is to take very seriously when we receive this title, Das, what of immense obligation that is to live by that spirit. If you're given a title of being the governor of state or a head of state, what a responsibility it is to not only follow, but to protect the laws of that state. For one who is given a high position, it's not something to enjoy. It's a responsibility entrusted to us. To be Das, to be a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is an honor that we can never conceive that we're deserving of. It really is causeless mercy, but it is also a responsibility entrusted to us to live up to that exalted title. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna, in the spirit of Sri Radha's love, he gave us even deeper insight. Gopi Bharatur Padakamalaya Das 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 Anudas. If we're truly a Das, if we're truly a servant of Krishna, then Samsiddhir Haritoshanam. Our purpose is to please Krishna, and we please Krishna by serving those who are dear to Krishna. At one time, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, was in a place, and people wanted to meet him, to have his darshan. When they would come in, he would ask them what their goal of life was, to be a servant of Krishna. He spoke a few words and politely said he was busy. But if someone came in and said, my goal in life is to be a servant of Krishna, he said, I have all the time in the world for you. Yes, if we recognize that Srila Prabhupada loved his devotees, then according to how we could best serve, we feel it a great honor and a great responsibility to serve those who Krishna and our Gurus love. And Krishna and Srila Prabhupada and our Gurus love is not necessarily the way we would like to interpret it. Because we want to interpret things according to our love, according to our preferences, according to our habits, according to our experiences. But being a servant is a very, very deep subject. In one sense, it's in a Vaishnav spirit to be Das. It's the conclusion of all the philosophies and knowledge of all the holy scriptures of the world and all the Vedic literatures. And to the degree we sincerely, earnestly, and honestly try to imbibe this spirit, Krishna will reciprocate and cleanse our hearts, our minds, as we hear his glories and chant his holy names. So how great it is to be a Haridas. But Srimati Radharani declares that Govardhan is Haridas Varya. I am your servant. After that, he probably won't come back. And why does Shri Radha declare Giriraj Govardhan to be Haridas Varya? Because he gives the maximum pleasure to Krishna by giving pleasure to those who Krishna loves and those who love Krishna. He provides the most enchanting setting for the Basanta Rasa Leela, the most confidential of the rasa dances in the spring season, with Shri Radha and her confidential associates and Krishna. Provides the most pleasurable playground for Krishna and the cowherd boys to play their games, to joke, to laugh, and to herd their cows, and provides the greatest happiness to the cows and the goats and the birds and all the other animals that may roam on Govardhan Hill. Every tree is a Kalpavriksha tree that fulfills all our wishes. Every speck of dust is a Chintamani. Every stone is a self-same manifestation of Krishna, who is taking the greatest pleasure being a servant of his devotees. Nectarine waters, lakes, waterfalls, rivers, limitless fragrant flowers, beautiful blossoming flowers, wonderful caves that are cool in the summer, warm in the winter, filled with jewels and wonderful furnishings and incredible panoramic views of Vrindavan. The birds are empowered to sing so sweetly. The grass is so nutritious, soft, delicious for the gopas and the gopis and the cows to trample and dance upon, and for the cows to eat. Each stone is warm in the winter, cool in the summer, and every step that every animal, every bird, every cowherd boy and every cowherd girl, very personally, at the moment that that step comes upon Giriraj, he becomes so soft and soothing. In every possible way, Giriraj, with the ultimate creativity, is constantly meditating on giving everyone the highest pleasure. And the person who gives Krishna the highest pleasure, Shri Radha, she declares that Giriraj is the best of all devotees. Raghunath Das Goswami, he gave up great fortunes to be the personal servant of Lord Chaitanya in Jagannath Puri. By the mercy of Lord Nityananda, he was allowed to be liberated from all the entanglements and distractions of material life and be in the personal association of Lord Chaitanya. And he is our Prayojana Acharya. This means he's the Acharya that exemplifies and teaches by his example and his words the highest ultimate perfection of Gopi Bhav, the love of gopis. And yet Raghunath Das Goswami, who was just living close to Lord Chaitanya for 16 years in Puri, he hardly spoke a word to him. He was always serving Swarup Damodar Goswami, servant of the servant. Now, for most of us, if we were in that situation, we would be running to be close to Lord Chaitanya. And certainly Lord Chaitanya would have given him everything. But in his humility, he understood Lord Chaitanya will be more pleased with me if I serve somebody who loves him. And for 16 years, he was assisting Swarup Damodar Goswami and hardly exchanged words with Lord Chaitanya. Not because he was afraid, but that was just the depth of his natural love to please the Lord. And after being in such an exalted position, he came to Vrindavan to spend the rest of his life here at Govardhan Hill. When Raghunath Das Goswami came to Braj Bhumi, according to the scriptures we are studying, it seems like Shyamakund and Radhakund were in the same state as when Lord Chaitanya discovered it. Two puddles in a paddy field, and for generations, Brajavasis didn't give it any attention whatsoever, because they just thought they were two puddles of water in a paddy field. But when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was sitting under that tamal tree, praying, not praying, but whatever, he was in the mood of a devotee, he was praying to discover Radhakund and Shyamakund. He saw the Radhakund and Shyamakund of the spiritual world, which is more elegant, charming, and opulent than anything within creation. Raghunath Das Goswami lived the rest of his life there near these puddles. And gradually, by the inspiration of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Radha Gopinath, he excavated it closer to what we understand it to be today. At the foot of Govardhan Hill, Jiva Goswami did bhajan here. Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Srila Sanatan Goswami at Manasi Ganga, and Radhakund, Raghava Pandit, one of most dearmost associates of Lord Chaitanya, had a cave just close to where we are now. Yes, the greatest scholars, the most empowered lovers of God, they worshipped Govardhan Hill. Who are we to all be assembled here? In his most merciful form of Giriraj, he's hearing every word that every one of us speaks. He's hearing our thoughts too. We are in the presence of ultimate greatness. But because of this veil of Maya, we take great things to be ordinary, and we take ordinary things to be great. And that's the way the world is. How the world honors material improvements in the form of so many sciences and technologies and arts and cultures, power, fame, wealth, money, property, influence, physical beauty, accumulation of abundant memory and knowledge. Janmaishwarya Shruta Shibir. Kunti prayed, Akinchana Gocharam. The whole world is seeking these material opulences, but they make one proud. And if one's proud, however one dresses, whatever position one may be in, one cannot, in a genuine, feelingly way, call out the names of God. Of course, in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Rupa Goswami's teachings of Yukta Vairagya, if we understand I'm not the proprietor, I'm not the doer, if we actually recognize that Krishna is great, then we could utilize every type of resource within this creation in Krishna's service as a servant of a servant of a servant. But by the veil of Maya, the supreme, infinite, eternal joy of loving and serving the all-attractive Krishna and his most beloved devotees, it's covered. And we think, I am the controller, I am the proprietor, and I am the enjoyer. We are in the presence of Giriraj. We may not recognize it, but by hearing from Krishna, from Bhagavan, by hearing from the sacred literatures, the Shastras, the sadhus, the gurus, we can develop Shraddha, faith in what is on the other side of that veil that's covering us. When we recognize the greatness of Krishna and our own inadequacies, then how can we arrogantly find fault with others? The veil of Maya covers Krishna's glories and our own relationship with Krishna to such an extent that we displease and even offend Krishna and find so many ways to justify it. Maya is very strong, but when we take shelter of the Supreme Lord, when we take shelter of Sri Govinda Dev, when we take shelter Charya Vaishnava Seva Nistara Payachikeva, of those who love Krishna, then Krishna he gives us the faith to move beyond that veil of Maya. And that is the path of bhakti. Today is Diwali. And what we are thinking is tomorrow we'll discuss the Govardhan Leela of Govardhan Puja. And beginning today and for next several days, we will, with your permission, in our own unqualified ways, we'll try to describe the various holy places around Govardhan Hill. But it is the month of Damodar. And Srila Prabhupada lived around a Damodar temple. And every night we're singing the prayers of Damodar. I would like to briefly share this story. On the day of Diwali, we could say long ago, from an external historical perspective, it was about 5,000 years ago. But in truth, it's happening today in the Aprakata Leela, in the Nitya Leela of the Lord. These pastimes are forever taking place in the land of Vrindavan. But there's that veil. Rimanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena. This phrase was spoken by Lord Brahma in Brahma Samhita. When we're in transcendental consciousness, that's like the cawing of a peacock. Lord Chaitanya would just say everything would remind him of Krishna. We were saying Damodar, yes. In this eternal Leela of the Lord, Lord Brahma. In the Brahma Vimohan Leela, after Krishna liberated Aghasura. Aghasura was such a massive, huge snake. When he opened his mouth, the top of his lips reached the clouds. And he had huge, sharp teeth. And his breath was filled with all the dead living beings he devoured. We're afraid of a little snake. Can you imagine Aghasura? The demigods were terrified of Agha. But yet, and he came to get revenge. We all know how powerful this passion of revenge could be in the human mind. Because Krishna killed his sister. How vengeful would you be if someone killed your sister? And brother. His sister was Putana, and brother was Bakasura. He wanted to cause the maximum misery in Vrindavan. He had such a plan. If I kill Krishna and his friends, the cowherd boys, and all the calves that they're taking care of, then the cows and the elder gopas and gopis, they will all die in separation from the suffering of losing their loved ones. And this way he came to extinguish all life in Brajbhumi. I guess in modern terms we would call it genocide. That was his evil intention. But yet the cowherd boys and the calves, being in the presence of Krishna, they were so fearless. Achahure manasi nandanandana abhay charana. They happily smiled and clapped and danced into his mouth. Now, all the demons that Krishna killed in Vrindavan, he did it usually in clear view of everyone. And he did it in a very special way. He didn't manifest any apparent Aishwarya. But because all the children were unconscious and the calves were unconscious, and Agha closed his mouth and nobody could see what was inside, Krishna secretly expanded his body. Bigger, 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 bigger. And Agha was trying to get bigger to breathe, but he suffocated. And then Krishna and all his friends, they didn't see it either. They were sleeping. He glanced upon them, he woke them up, and they were just shut. They went outside and had lunch on the bank of Yamuna. And Brahma was thinking, who is this person? He could not understand. He's the absolute truth. Well, Krishna, when he performs his Leela, it's so complete and perfect. Because in the beginning of the 10th canto, Bhumi Devi, Mother Earth, who did she come to for shelter? She came to Brahma, and Brahma took her with the other demigods to the shore of the ocean of milk, and they prayed to Vishnu, and Vishnu said, I will come in the Vrishni Yadu dynasty. Now, when Krishna was in the womb of Devaki, the demigods were praying for him. It's a whole chapter in Srimad Bhagavatam. But somehow or other, Brahma's the guru and the father of everybody. But he forgot. Because Krishna's glory was so inconceivable. How such a beautiful little child would be God. He wanted to see. And when he came to bank of Yamuna, he saw Krishna's having lunch with his friends. Somebody would take a bite from a laddu and say, Krishna, this is very good. Try it. And they take it out of their mouth and give to Krishna. And Gopal would say, oh, this is very good. And he would take a bite, and they were just sharing it. In the heavenly worlds, that's not the way you serve God. He wanted to test. He took all the calves and all the gopas and hid them. And I'm not going to tell the story, because I'm supposed to tell another story. This is the reason my classes go over time sometimes. I'm sorry. Krishna manifested himself in the exact identical form of every gopa and every calf for 1 full year. And that was just a minute for Brahma. He came down to see, and he was bewildered. All the calves were there. All the cowherd boys were there. But yet, they were still in a cave where he had them sleeping, and he was utterly bewildered. And then all the cowherd boys and all the calves turned into 4-armed forms of Narayan, and around them were all the demigods and the sages, around each one of them. And there were limitless calves. What was Brahma saying? He was completely bewildered. And then one of the cowherd boys, who was actually Krishna and just in that form, he looked at Brahma and said, Brahma, to me, you are as insignificant as one of my goats. This is the way you talk to the creator of the universe. At that moment, Brahma fell unconscious and everything disappeared. And all there was Krishna standing with that little ball of food in his hand looking for his friends and calves. And Brahma fell unconscious again. And when he looked up, he recognized this little cowherd boy is the absolute truth, the source of all avatars, the creator of all material existence, and the supreme enjoyer in the spiritual world for all eternity. Brahma surrendered. He realized the first thing, he was insignificant. In his prayer, he said, and this is a good lesson for all of us, he said, at night, in darkness, the firefly thinks he's lighting up the world, because all he sees is what's just within his little eyesight. Firefly just goes, and light, thinking I'm lighting up the world. But in the presence of the sun, the firefly is realizes, I am insignificant. In the presence of Krishna, Brahma is thinking he's utterly insignificant. Did that make him depressed? No, it made him happy. Because in that state, he surrendered his life. He surrendered his body, mind, words, his soul to Krishna to serve. And it was in that surrender that he was given the vision of Vrindavan. He was seeing the exact same thing. A few minutes before, he was seeing trees. Now he's seeing every tree as a kalpavriksha. He was seeing the dust on the ground. Now he's seeing every particle as a chintamani, more precious than heavenly jewels. He was seeing cows and calves. Now he's seeing their kamadhenus, their wish-fulfilling cows. He was seeing little boys playing. Now he's seeing they're the most advanced, enlightened, liberated lovers of God in all existence. What was the difference between just before and just after? He surrendered. He took shelter. He was Trinada Bhisunichena. He was really humble. And Krishna revealed Goloka, Gokula. In Brahma's prayers, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Viloch. One can see God only when one's eyes are anointed with the salve of love. It's not through just accomplishments, knowledge, accumulations, birth, health. These things could be valuable resources, but Bhaktya Mama Vijanati. It's only by love that we could know Krishna, because Tesham Sadata Yuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvakam. Tadami Buddhi Yogam Dam Yena Mamupagant. We can understand Krishna only by our priti, our love. Krishna reveals himself. So on this day of Diwali, Yashoda Mai, she rose early and she sent all of her assistants to do other chores because she wanted to satisfy Krishna by putting her full motherly love into making butter for Krishna's enjoyment. Previous to this day of Diwali, she was getting so many complaints from so many gopis, elder gopis, about Krishna coming to steal their yogurt, their butter, and their ghee. Kavi Karnapur tells some stories. When Krishna was a little child in Gokul Mahavan, he and Balaram, they learned how to crawl. And then Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda, they gradually were trying to teach Krishna and Balaram how to walk. And as soon as they started walking, they began their pastimes of stealing butter. One time, Krishna was in Yashoda Mai's house, and when she wasn't around, he broke a pot of butter and was eating it. And suddenly he saw a jeweled pillar, and his reflection was shining in the jeweled pillar. He thought it was somebody watching him. He became afraid. How is God afraid? Because he wants to be afraid. For rasa, for ecstatic, loving relationships, Krishna does everything. He started speaking with a trembling voice to the reflection in the pillar that, please, my friend, do not tell my mother that I'm stealing butter. Because if you tell my mother, I will be in big trouble. So please, my friend, if you don't tell my mother, I'll share this butter with you. He thought he was caught. Yashoda Mai was watching all of this happening, and suddenly she appeared, and Krishna cried out, I didn't do it. I didn't steal the butter. I didn't. Honest mother, I didn't do it. And he pointed to the reflection, said, he did it. I warned him he shouldn't do it. I chastised him, don't do it. This is my mother's butter. You should not take it. You will get in big trouble if you take it. But he didn't listen to me, mother. He not only ate it, but he broke the pot. But honest mother, I didn't eat it. He stole the butter. And Yashoda Mai, she smiled. Another day, Yashoda Mai came into the house and she saw Krishna's hand in a butter pot, completely covered with fresh butter. So himsa butter. But Krishna said, because you put ruby bracelets on me this morning, the heat of the shining of the rubies is causing such pain that I have put my hands in this butter just to cool it off and relieve the pain. Yashoda Mai took his hands out of the butter, and of course his hands were completely healthy and effulgent, but with a very tender, mother caring voice, she said, oh, I could see your hands are burnt, and I promise I will never put these bracelets on you again. And then there are so many stories of gopis coming and complaining to Yashoda Mai of all the mischief that Krishna would do in their houses. One particular gopi, her name was Prabhavati. She's a very exalted personality because she is the wife of Upananda, who's the elder brother of Nanda Maharaj. She told Yashoda Mai that your Gopal, he causes so much disturbance. We put to hide our butter from Krishna, we put it on rafters, and Krishna comes with his friends, and they get on each other's shoulders, and they break the pots, and then they drink the butter, and then he invite monkeys and fill our house with monkeys, and they feed the butter to the monkeys. And look at your Gopal. He looks so innocent. He looks so shy and afraid. But I know at this moment, he's only thinking about the next time he's going to come to steal her. Yashoda looked at Gopal, and he just looked so innocent. Prabhavati went home the next day. Krishna and his friends, they saw the butter hanging from rafters on ropes. They got on each other's shoulders, and they took a stick and broke the pot, and the yogurt and butter was just pouring down on the floor, and they were calling monkeys. And when Prabhavati heard the pot crack, she came running to the room, and all the cowherd boys ran away, but she caught Krishna. And she said, now your body's covered with my yogurt and butter. Now I'm going to take you to Yashoda, and she will teach you good lessons. She was pulling little Gopal by the hand, and Gopal became very serious. He said, do not tell my mother. I warn you, do not tell my mother. She pulled him to Nanda Bhavan in Gokul. On the way, Nanda Maharaj happened to be. And Krishna was so embarrassed by being apprehended. He put a cloth over his face so Nanda Maharaj didn't see him. Then they came before Yashoda Mai, and Prabhavati said, now I caught Krishna in the act of stealing my butter. You could see his body is covered with it. Here he is. And Yashoda Mai said, yes, I will teach him a good lesson today. But his face was covered with cloth. Yashoda Mai said, take off that cloth. Prabhavati removed the cloth, but she didn't see what was. Yashoda Mai just looked completely, amusingly perplexed. She didn't say anything, but she just looked really perplexed. Prabhavati looked at Gopal, and she saw, while he was still in her hand, it was her own son. Very embarrassing. Yashoda Mai didn't say anything out of respect. Prabhavati was completely bewildered. I brought my own son. And she, still holding his hand, she said, let's go home. And as they were going home, she heard a little voice, and she looked down, and in her hand was Gopal. And Gopal curved his eyebrows down in a very serious way. He said, oh, Gopi, I warned you. If you ever do this again, I will take the form of your husband. So these are some stories that are leading to today, Diwali. Yashoda Mai is thinking, Krishna's stealing so many other people's butter. I will put so much love and so much devotion that he'll be satisfied. And he'll never have to go anywhere else. She was so attentive to every detail. Bhakti is really about pleasing Krishna, and as far as humanly possible, being attentive to every detail of what will please Krishna. This is the way a devotee should live. Nanda Maharaj had 900,000 cows. Yashoda Mai selected the 108 cows that gave the best, most nectarine milk. And among them, she chose 8. And among them, she chose 1. And that would be the cow that would supply Krishna butter. And she grew the grass for this cow. Very, very special grass. She didn't use water. She used the milk of those most supreme cows to water the grass. And the grass was called Padmaganda. It was so fragrant and so sweet. And that was the only grass she fed to this cow. And she fed it with her own hands. And she personally milked that cow with her own motherly love. And she personally transformed it into yogurt, dahi. And then on that Diwali morning, or on this Diwali morning, she was churning it. And it was early morning, so Krishna was still sleeping. And as she was churning, she was absorbed in remembering Krishna and chanting Krishna's names and glories. Every day in Vrindavan, the devotees would compose beautiful poetry and songs about what Krishna did on that day. And as she was singing about Krishna and remembering Krishna with her motherly love, tears were in her eyes, and she was singing so sweetly and so beautifully, and the sound of the butter churning was keeping rhythm to her beautiful songs. And out of motherly affection, milk started coming from her own body, and Krishna was sleeping. But as soon as that motherly milk started coming from her body, Krishna woke up, and he was hungry, or let us say thirsty, to receive that love. So he jumped out of his bed and he came running to the scene, and he held the churning rod and stood between his mother and the churning rod and demanded, I am thirsty, please feed me. And Yashoda Mai's heart melted. She put Krishna on her lap and began to feed him. But in the next room, Maganda milk that she was making preparations for Gopal later that day began to boil over. It was on a fire, and she went running to take the milk off the stove. But Krishna wanted to show the world in devotional service, we should never put any priority before Krishna. So while she was away, he took a stone and broke the pot that she was turning and began to eat the yogurt. Then he ran away. Yashoda came back. Krishna was gone. The pot was broken. Butter was spilt all over. She saw his tiny little footprints of butter on the ground, on the floor, and she followed them. And in the outside courtyard, he climbed a wooden grinding mortar to reach butter that was hanging from a rope, and he broke that pot. He was eating it, and his Gopa friends were there, and the monkeys of Vrindavan were invited. Gopal was personally, with his own hands, distributing this yogurt to the monkeys. Our acharyas tell us that when Krishna was in his incarnation of Lord Ramchandra, in that great battle to rescue Sita, it was Lakshman, Ram, and the Vanaras, the monkey army, Hanuman, Sugriva, Nila, Jambavan, so many. And they built that bridge across the ocean, and they fight that mighty war. And after Sita was rescued, Ram was in exile. He told monkeys, I have nothing to give you in return. But Krishna called those same monkeys to be monkeys in Vrindavan, where he could fully reciprocate them with his own loving hands, giving the yogurt from his mother's pot. But when Yashoda Mice came into the room with a little stick in her hand, the Gopas saw this and ran away. The monkeys saw her, and they shrieked, started jumping onto the trees and through the windows and everywhere. And when Krishna saw this, he looked around and he saw his mother. He jumped down to run away. Krishna ran and Yashoda Mai ran after him. Who could catch God? He's faster than the fastest. But she was running with all of her strength because she wanted to protect her by her motherly love. Krishna was running and she was running. She had flowers in her hair. Some of those flowers, when they heard her chanting Krishna's glories while churning the butter, they jumped from her hair to take the dust of her feet. But now that they saw that she was about to punish Krishna, they didn't want to be a part of it, so they fell from her hair. Being subordinate to his devotees' love, we could say that Krishna allowed himself to be caught by Yashoda. But on a deeper level, the rasa of Vrindavan is so beautiful that Krishna just could not escape the love of Yashoda. Krishna started to cry. Tears were pouring from his little eyes, mixed with the black mascara, the kajal, and it made a beautiful sight, streaking his face. Mother, I did it. I confess. Please put down that stick. And Yashoda Mai saw he was afraid of the stick, so she threw it aside. Yashoda Mai told Gopal, because you are associating with monkeys, you have become as mischievous as a monkey. Gopal said, Mother, what is my fault? They like to play with me. Kunti Devi remembers this beautiful episode, that he who is feared by fear personified, the source of the most powerful creators and incarnations. He wasn't afraid of Hiranyakashipu or Hiranyaksha or Ravana. He wasn't afraid of Kumbhakarna. And Yashoda Mai is just a simple mother. But Krishna was trembling. His limbs, his lips were quivering. His eyes were tearing. And he was praying for his mother's mercy. Kunti Devi, he who was feared by fear personified is afraid of a gopi. I wonder, what is the power of the loving relationships of Vrindavan? To protect Krishna, because she had so many chores, she took a rope, a very soft rope that are used to protect the calves. And she was going to tie Gopal's waist to the grinding mortar, which was an accomplice to his pastime. It was the width of 2 fingers, too small. She tied more rope. It was still 2 fingers too small, more rope and more rope. She was continuously tying ropes together. The news spread, and other gopis from their houses were bringing big supplies of ropes, all different color ropes. And gopis were handing Yashoda Mai ropes, and she was tying it together. However many meters and meters and meters of ropes, it was always exactly 2 fingers too small. Gopal's waist was not growing. The ropes were growing like anything. The gopis were watching in wonder. And Yashoda Mai was working so hard. She wanted to protect her child. It was a festival of ropes. And gopis called out to Yashoda, "It is not Krishna's destiny to be bound by ropes today." But Yashoda Mai, she said, "I must find out how much ropes it takes to bind my son's waist." Her sari was loosening. She was perspiring. By the power of her motherly love, she successfully bound Krishna by the waist. Thus his name, Damodara. And every evening during this month, we sing the beautiful prayers by Satyavrat Muni, where he's offering his obeisances to the rope. Because what is that rope? It is his mother's love. It is the love of his devotee. Krishna finds the greatest pleasure being bound, being held captive by the love of his devotees. Therefore, this month, we call it the month of Damodar. In the Vedic calendar, it is a month, but we celebrate it in this spirit. It is the month where we celebrate the power of bhakti, the ultimate power. The power that Krishna takes the greatest pleasure to be bound and conquered by. And on this day, after she went to her chores, Krishna saw those 2 Arjuna trees in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj. And Sukadev Goswami tells the background. Long ago, Narada Muni was traveling, and he came to a heavenly world where there were 2 sons of Kuvera, Nala Kuvera, Manigriva, who were heavenly demigods. And they were so proud of their physical beauty, so proud of their intellect, so proud of their wealth, so proud of their high position. They were having amorous sports with young heavenly damsels in a lake. Narada Muni came by, the heavenly damsels saw him, and they were ashamed. They were all without clothes. So they immediately got up and covered themselves. But Nala, Kuvera, and Manigriva were so shameless. They showed no respect for the devotee of the Lord. And Narada Muni, in such mercy, feeling compassion upon them, he cursed them to become trees. You like to stand naked? Okay, you be tree. But by his mercy, the place that they stood of trees for a long, long time, and they had the full consciousness of being demigods. That's pretty frustrating. They can't move. They can't go anywhere. Nobody cares about them. In that state, they became very purified. And as they were getting purified, some generations later, Nanda Maharaj built his house there, and that was his courtyard. And every day they were seeing Gopal's pastimes and Balaram's pastimes. They became completely purified. And when little Gopal saw the 2 Arjuna trees, he remembered his devotee Narada Muni, who so long, generations ago, he showed mercy to them. And Gopal never lets the mercy of his beloved devotee go in vain. When we receive the mercy of those who love Krishna, even in future lifetimes, Krishna will never forget that mercy. And he will make sure that it fructifies in due course. So Krishna pulled the grinding mortar, and he crawled right between the Arjuna trees. But the grinding mortar got stuck between them, and Krishna pulled, and these massive, huge trees that were centuries and centuries old, they were uprooted from the ground, and with a massive, tumultuous, thunderous sound, But the difference is the entire earth shook. And everyone throughout Brajabhumi, what is that? They were horrified. And they came running to the scene. And Nanda Maharaj and some of his cowherd men, they saw little Gopal right in between these two massive fallen trees. Previous to Nanda Maharaj coming, his little friends came. They gathered around. They saw everything. They tried to untie the knot, but because it was tied with the bhava of Yashoda Mai's Vatsalya Ras, they had no power to disentangle it. But Nanda Maharaj, with his fatherly love, untied the knot. And the little children, they began to tell what they saw. Gopal crawled between the trees. He pulled it. He pulled them down. And then out from the trees came these two effulgent people. And they had a conversation with Krishna. And then they bowed down to Krishna. And then they circumambulated Krishna. And then they flew up into the sky. Brajavasis were thinking, what is this? How could we believe such a thing? Nanda Maharaj took Krishna on his lap. It was so fearful. From their perspective, he was on either side of him. There was hardly an inch between where he was on his knees and where the tree was lying. When Yashoda Mai heard the tumultuous roar and crash of the trees, she became so afraid. And when she heard what happened, she came running frantically. She considered it her fault, the one that bound Krishna. She felt responsible. She felt ashamed. She came running to Gopal. Nanda Maharaj said, Gopal, your mother has come. Go to your mother. She said, I want to stay with you, Father. And he said loud enough so Yashoda Mai could hear, I do not want to be with my mother. That was like a thunderous bolt into her soft heart that devastated her. She began to cry. She went back to her home and she was simply crying. And Krishna was playing on the lap of Nanda Maharaj. And after some time, Rohini Devi, the mother of Balaramji, she came running, very, very serious and grave. He said, Gopal, your mother, she's feeling so guilty. She's feeling so ashamed. She's trembling in anxiety. She's constantly crying. Because of what she did to you, she's withering away. She's about to die. Unless you come to her, she will not survive. Gopal, please save your mother. When Krishna heard this, he jumped off the lap of Nanda Maharaj and went running back to his home, crying, Mai, Mai. When Yashoda Mai heard Krishna calling her name, she jumped up and started running toward Krishna, calling, Gopal, Gopal. And as she ran toward Krishna and Krishna ran toward her, Krishna jumped into her arms. And then she fed Krishna the milk of her motherly love on her lap, which is where the story began. So in this material world, we're all bound by the ropes of the three modes of material nature. Goodness, passion, ignorance. But in Sri Vrindavan Dham, Krishna binds Nanda Yashoda and his devotees by the ropes of his love. And when a devotee agrees to be bound by the ropes of Krishna's love, Krishna finds the greatest happiness to be bound by the ropes of his devotees' love. And now we will begin today's class. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Vrindavan, he began his Govardhan Parikrama at Manasi Ganga. So, with your permission, I'd like to begin this narration at Manasi Ganga. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he took his bath there, and then he went to and then he worshipped Manasi Ganga, and then he went to the temple of Hari Dev and danced before the form of the Lord, and from there he did his Govardhan Parikrama. Manasi Ganga has a beautiful history. Ganga, the goddess, considered the holiest of all holy rivers in the universe. She was witnessing her sister Yamuna offering such loving service to Krishna and Balaram, to Sri Radharani and Gopis, to all the residents of Vrindavan. He witnessed the beautiful pastimes of Krishna coming with cows and playing in Yamuna, and Shri Radha and Gopis and Nanda and Yashoda. Yamuna, so much the heart of Braj Bhumi. Ganga longed, she prayed, she yearned to offer service to Krishna. And Yamuna, she felt such affection for Ganga that she brought Ganga along with her to meet with Krishna. And Yamuna says, Ganga wants to share these beautiful pastimes. And Ganga shared her own heart. Krishna replied, in the spiritual world of Goloka, you are ever existing as the Manasi Ganga, and you are forever assisting in my most intimate loving pastimes. But now, to fulfill your prayer, I will soon bring you to the Vrindavan in the earth, where you will reside at the holiest of places, Govardhan Hill, and you will share my sweetest pastimes. Soon after, in Bandiravan, he was playing with cowherd boys, and at that time they were still taking care of calves. This sent a particular asura who was so devious, cruel, hypocritical, and deceiving that he took the form of a tiny little female calf with the intent to murder Krishna. He was so innocent looking, so sweet. You know how calves, they have such beautiful lotus eyes that glisten with so much sweetness and affection. So this calf, this demon actually took the form of a calf that didn't come that day. Nobody detected except Krishna. Krishna secretly went to Balaram, said, you see that calf? That calf is deceiving us. He's a powerful demon who has taken disguise. Krishna walked up behind the calf. Because Vatsasura was secretly to kill Krishna and his friends in such a deceptive way, Krishna reciprocated. And he came behind Vatsasura, so Vatsasura didn't even know he was there. And suddenly Krishna grabbed him by his hind legs and whirled him around over his own head. He spun him so fast that Vatsasura, due to being so dizzy, he left his body. And Krishna whirled him to the top of a tree and assumed his original, huge, horrible, demoniac form. The demigods showered flowers to celebrate, and the cowherd boys clapped their hands and jumped up and down and said, well done, well done. But after a few days, the Gopas said to Krishna that we are not going to play with you anymore. Krishna said, why? They chastised him. You killed a female calf. Gopal said, that was a horrible demon. He took that form to kill all of us. I saved us. They said, we know what you're saying is true, but still, she was a calf, and therefore we will not be touched by you or associate with you. Krishna asked, what should I do? They said, you must purify your sin by bathing in the Ganga. And Krishna, with his mind, he called Mother Ganga to come to Vrindavan. With his mind, Manasi, he called her. And Mother Ganga, waiting, longing, yearning, praying for this opportunity, she appeared and filled the beautiful lake that became Manasi Ganga. And all the cowherd boys were very happy. And it became a favorite place for them to play. Krishna bathes, and everyone was satisfied. Soon after, Nanda, Yashoda, the elder Gopas, Gopis, they were hearing a katha from Brahmins, and they were describing the glories of Mother Ganga. They told a story that once Garuda was carrying in his claws a snake, and he was flying over the river Ganga, and a drop of water touched the snake. Suddenly, the snake manifested an eternal, four-armed, spiritual form of a resident of Vaikuntha. And Garuda, seeing that that snake had now become a devotee, he put that wonderful personality on his back and flew him to transport him back to Vaikuntha for eternal loving service. Upon hearing this story, the Vrajavasis had such nice faith in the Brahmins. They said, we should all go to the Ganga on a pilgrimage. So everyone agreed. Krishna happened to see Nanda Maharaj and the cowherd men loading various paraphernalia on ox carts. And he said, what are you doing? And they told him the story. We're going on pilgrimage to Ganga. All the holy places in all the universe are forever existing in Vrindavan. Just like all the incarnations and all the expansions and all the plenary portions are all within Krishna. And all the goddesses and all the devis and all the goddesses of fortune and all the consorts of the Supreme Lord are all eternally residing within Srimati Radharani. Similarly, all the spiritual abodes and all the holy places and all existence are forever existing within Vrindavan, because Srimati Radharani is Vrindavaneshwari, and Vrindavan is an expansion of Krishna himself. It is his eternal abode. So Krishna told Nanda Maharaj, there's no reason to go on pilgrimage anywhere because the pilgrimage is right here. Ganga is here. Come, I'll show you. And he took Nanda Maharaj by the hand, and he and all the Vrajavasis came to Manasi Ganga. And just to make his words ring completely true to all the Vrajavasis, immediately Ganga Mai, the goddess of Ganga, with her full splendor, she appeared, riding on a royal, majestic, beautiful crocodile. When they saw Ganga Mai and they received her blessings, everyone understood for sure, yes, Ganga is at Govardhan, here in Vrindavan. And this particular story that we are speaking is taking place on the day of Diwali. And as we're sitting here bathing in this narration, there are probably tens and thousands of Vrajavasis bathing at Manasi Ganga at this moment. It is a tradition in Vrindavan for generations and generations on the day of Diwali to come to Manasi Ganga to take bath and to offer lamps. Just as in Ayodhya when Ram returned, they welcomed him with lamps of love. The Vrajavasis, to celebrate Krishna bringing Mother Ganga into Braj Bhumi, they offer her the lamps of their love. Our acharyas describe there is no difference between Manasi Ganga and Ganga. She is Ganga, but the sweetness and the power of the purification and the love that she gives here at Govardhan is unparalleled from any other place. The Goswamis describe that one night, as it was getting darker and darker, Sri Radharani and gopis, they were carrying of ghee and butter and yogurt and sweets, and they needed to cross the Manasi Ganga. At that time, it was a very large lake. They became very afraid. As it was getting darker and darker, there was no way to cross. Krishna put on the robes of a boatman and actually disguised his true identity. He appeared like a boatman, and he had a really old boat. And gopis called out to him, "Oh, boatman, boatman, please carry us across before it gets too dark." And the boatman said, "Well, you have to pay." He said, "What do we pay?" He says, "Give me all your sweets." So they gave all the sweets. After some negotiations, and Krishna ate them very nicely. And then they got in the boat and he began to row. Krishna said, this is very hard work. I'm becoming very hungry. Please give me the yogurt and the butter and the ghee. And he started eating that. And then he was rowing. And he said, "I ate too much. Because I overate, I can't continue rowing. I have to lay down." And then he lay down. And he said, "This hard work is very difficult. My limbs are aching. Please massage me." Then he started rowing again. He said, there's too much weight on this boat. You have to take off all your jewels and your ornaments and throw them in Manasi Ganga. Gopi said, if you don't take us across, we're going to throw you in the Manasi. So he began to row, and he rowed, and now they were way in the middle of the lake, and by Krishna's own will, very dark, ominous clouds began to form in the sky. There was lightning bolts and rumbling thunder. And then Krishna secretly, they didn't see what was happening. He was rocking the boat himself. He was rocking it in such a way that more and more water was getting in it. The boat's filling with water. It's rocking. There's thunder. There's lightning. And Sri Radharani put her arms around him. Oh, boatman, please save us. But when she put her arms around him, by Krishna's Yogamaya potency he attracted, she found his flute. His flute was tied to his waist. And when Krishna was discovered, he immediately manifested his garment, his role as a cowherd boy with a turban and a peacock feather. And being irresistibly attracted by the desire to please Sri Radha and gopis, he began to play his flute. And our worship Goswamis tell this beautiful story that throughout the night, Krishna played his flute under the moonlight and the stars and had very sweet pastimes with Sri Radha and her gopis. And in this way, our Goswamis revealed to us just a drop from the limitless glories of Manasi Ganga. On the banks of Manasi Ganga, there's a little hill. And after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bathed in that hill, bathed in the lake, he climbed that hill to have the darshan of the ancient deity of Haridev. The history is in Govardhan, the Basant Rasa Lila takes place. In Vrindavan, the Saradiya Rasa Lila, where Krishna performs Rasa Lila with gopis in the autumn. And that is very much where Krishna plays his flute at Bamsivat. He calls so many gopis. Here at Govardhan, when he plays his flute at the Rasastali, he calls specifically most confidential gopis of Sri Radha's associates. So it's a very special spring Ras Lila. And this subject is described in the writings of Jayadev Goswami and Gita Govinda. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with Ramananda Rai and Swarup Damodar Goswami at the Gambhira in Puri would often discuss these beautiful pastimes. One evening, when gopis and Srimati Radharani were waiting for Krishna, time passed. They waited, and they waited, and they waited. Yugayatam nameshina chakshushakravrashayat sunyayatam jagat sarvam govinda virahename. This is the love of the gopis. The Prabhupada describes they criticized Lord Brahma because he created the human body with eyelids, and eyelids involuntarily open and close. Now, since this lecture started, you probably blinked your eyes hundreds and hundreds of times, but I don't think any of you have ever noticed that you did it even once, unless you really focus on meditating. Lord Chaitanya talks, Nimesh, that the amount of time that the eyelid involuntarily, that the upper and lower eyelid touch each other, is 1/12 of a second. And the gopis, during that time, they're not able to see Krishna during that moment. They criticize Brahma for creating such defective eyes. Defective because for them, the only value of anything is to the extent it pleases Krishna. And Krishna's pleased when we're absorbed in loving service to Krishna. So Radharani and gopis, they're waiting for Krishna to offer their entire being for Krishna's pleasure for the Basant Rasa Lila. And Krishna was not there. They waited They waited. In great desperation, they began to call out a name of Krishna, Haridev. They were crying out together. It was Prema Sankirtan. It was a loving kirtan, just like we read in the 10th canto when Krishna disappeared from the Rasa Leela in Vrindavan on bank of Yamuna. They chanted the Gautami Gita. They all chanted in this beautiful Prem Sankirtan together, and Krishna appeared. So on the bank of Manasi Ganga, they were crying out in kirtan together, Haridev, Haridev, Haridev. Suddenly, Krishna appeared in the form of a deity that was 7 years old in age, and with his left hand was raised to hold the Govardhan hill. Giridhari, the lifter of Govardhan hill, whose charming form forever enchants the hearts of the devotees. Gopis with water from Manasi Ganga, with fragrant blossom flowers, with lamps, with prayers, with song, they worshipped Haridev. And then Krishna came and they performed their beautiful pastimes. But from that time, the gopis would regularly come to worship the deity of Haridev, Krishna, the lifter of Govardhan hill. Sometime later, Bhadranab, the great-grandson of Krishna, re-established and formed a temple for Haridev. When Lord Chaitanya came, remembering these sweetest of sweet pastimes, in Jagannath Puri, Lord Chaitanya, in the mood of Sri Radha, was dancing before Jagannath in Ratha Yatra. And they had such a reciprocation. In the mood of Sri Radha, Lord Chaitanya was with his supreme love, with her supreme love, dancing and singing before Haridev. Golokera Premadana Harinam Sankirtan. In the spiritual world of Goloka, congregational chanting of the holy names and dancing in pure love is an eternal, ever-existing pastime. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he appeared, Radha Bhavaduti Suvalitam Nomi Krishna Swarupam, he came with many of his most confidential associates from Goloka. He manifested Goloka Vrindavan in the form of Navadvip, non-different than Vrindavan. And he also brought with him this eternal, supreme, loving pastime of Sankirtan. Kalikale Namarupe Krishna Avatar. Sri Radharani and Krishna have descended, incarnated with their full opulences, with their full sweetness, with their full mercy and love in their holy names. Nayanam Kalera Shudaraya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prayed in this way. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in great ecstasy, just beside Giriraj, Govardhan Hill, at Manasi Ganga, he was dancing before Haridev. It was such an ecstatic pastime that Brijavasis from so many villages all around came just to see the beautiful golden form of Mahaprabhu singing and dancing. And the pujaris of the Haridev deity, they welcomed, they honored, they offered gifts and prasad to Lord Chaitanya. And then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he went to Ramakund. Ramakund is the place where after Indra was defeated by Krishna, he wanted to perform an abhishek and coronate Krishna as the supreme god of all gods. And that took place at Govindakund. But various divine personalities were invited to come to participate, and Lord Brahma was going to be the head priest for the coronation of Krishna as Govinda. And Brahma brought divine celestial waters and kept them in what is now called Brahmakund. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after dancing with Haridev, he bathed in Brahmakund. His assistant Balabhadra Bhattacharya cooked lunch prasad for him there. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had prasad. He rested there, and then he returned to Haridev, where he spent the whole night, and then performed Govardhan Parikram. At Manasi Ganga is the temple of Chakaleshwar Mahadev. Just tell the story, and then we'll continue tomorrow. During the time of the Govardhan Puja and what happened after the storms of Indra, Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill, Haridev, with the little finger of his left hand, and for 7 days and 7 nights, he engaged Giriraj, as an umbrella to protect his devotees, and manifested his supreme loving mercy upon every devotee of Vrindavan continuously. So many different personalities were trying to help. We read that the cowherd men, Nanda Maharaj and the elder cowherd men, when they saw sometimes Krishna would tremble due to ecstatic feelings, Govardhan trembled. And they were thinking it was becoming too heavy for Krishna. So they took their cowherd sticks and they pushed it up against the hill in order to help Krishna. And they were thinking it's because we're helping him that he could hold up Govardhan Hill. And the younger cowherd boys, they could see that Krishna was holding up Govardhan Hill and they wanted to help him. So they were empowering Krishna by telling so many jokes and sharing so many stories and laughing, because the cowherd boys were thinking, because we're making Krishna laugh and we're making him so happy, we're empowering him to hold up Govardhan Hill. And Yashoda Mai, she saw Krishna sometimes trembling, and as a mother, how is it possible? My little boy is holding up this massive mountain. He must be so tired. And he's not eating anything. So she was bringing cakes and delicious prasad and having Subal and other cowherd boys put it in Krishna's mouth. And Yashoda Mai was thinking, because I'm feeding him, I'm helping him hold up Govardhan Hill. And gopis, the young gopis, they were glancing upon Krishna. And all the gopis, they were convinced, because Srimati Radharani is glancing upon Krishna, the power of her glance is enabling Krishna to hold up Govardhan Hill. And what is that glance? Her unmotivated, uninterrupted, supreme, all-powerful love, and the sweetness of her love. So everyone was helping. The Sudarshan Chakra, the personal weapon of Lord Narayan, he wanted to help. So he came down, and as Krishna was holding Govardhan Hill and torrents of massive rains of destruction were pouring down, he didn't want even a single drop to get under the hill where Krishna and the Vrijabasis were. So he was whirling around and drying up any drops of water that could possibly come under the hill for 7 days and 7 nights. And after the rains subsided, Krishna placed Govardhan Hill back onto the ground. And Sudarshan, this great devotee of Vishnu, he surrendered to Gopal. He said, I have been your associate forever, but I have never experienced such loving pastimes as what I witnessed with you and the Vrijabasis under Govardhan Hill. Please give me a place to reside here forever. And Gopal, reciprocating with the love of Sudarshan, he gave him a place to reside in Vrindavan forever. And that place is called Chakratirtha. And at Chakratirtha, Janab established the deity of Lord Shiva, Chakaleshwar Mahadev. It became a bhajan kutir for Srila Sanatana Goswami. The Bhakti Ratnakar tells us when Sanatana Goswami was a young man, actually he was very young, he had a dream. In the dream, a Brahmin came to his door and handed him the Srimad Bhagavatam. Sanatana Goswami was so excited, so grateful, so filled with love. Just touching the Srimad Bhagavatam absolutely thrilled him with love for Krishna. Suddenly he woke up and he didn't have Srimad Bhagavatam. He felt deep separation in his heart from what he just experienced in a dream. At that moment, somebody came to his door. It was the same Brahman as the dream. And he handed Sanatana Goswami the Srimad Bhagavatam. And from that day, the Srimad Bhagavatam became the life, the soul, the everything of Sanatana Goswami. He dedicated his life as the greatest, most precious treasure to study the Srimad Bhagavatam, to remember these beautiful narrations and stories, to share them with others. His life became a life of study of Srimad Bhagavatam. Later, we read he and his younger brother Rupa Goswami and Anupam, the three brothers, they were obliged to take the role of the chief ministers for the Nawab Hussain Shah. He was a very cruel, arrogant king of the Bengal region. But in order to protect the Hindu community, they took this role, and they were so expert and so gracious and so filled with compassion that everybody honored them, respected them, and loved them, including the Nawab Hussain Shah himself. He was deeply dependent upon them and treated them like brothers. He gave them immense wealth. He built them palaces. Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami and Anupam, all they wanted to do was serve the Supreme Lord Shri Radha and Krishna. Absorbed in studying and narrating Srimad Bhagavatam, they built what they called Kadamba Kanana, a beautiful forest which was a duplicate of Vrindavan. They made a Radha Kund and a Shama Kunda. They had a temple of Madan Gopal, and they had a forest of Kadamba trees and Tamal trees. It was none different than Vrindavan. It was a new Vrindavan 5 centuries back. And in their little place of Vrindavan, whenever they were not doing their ministerial duties, they would go there and chant the holy names and discuss Krishna's pastimes and worship Krishna and cry and pray in separation from Krishna. And they heard stories of Lord Chaitanya. And according to the Shastras, scriptures, and according to the love within their own heart, they knew for sure that Lord Gauranga was Krishna in the mood of Sri Radha's love. Lord Chaitanya was keeping it secret except from his most confidential associates. Although they never saw the Lord, just by hearing about him, they had that faith. They wrote letters to him. We want to be relieved of these governmental duties, and we want to give our whole heart and life to serving you. Bhakti Ratnakar describes they wrote repeated letters, but they never got a reply. And finally they got a reply, and it was very esoteric. Lord Gauranga, who is now Sri Krishna Chaitanya, he essentially told them that you should continue doing your duty as if you're completely attached, but be totally detached. And Krishna will soon save you by his mercy. So they carried on. And during Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's first attempt to go to Vrindavan, as he left Puri, all of his devotees came with him, except Gadadhar Pandit. Lord Chaitanya told him, you are a pujari of Tota Gopinath, you must stay and worship the deity. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took this deity worship seva very, very seriously, because for Mahaprabhu, the deity is Krishna. The deity is Sri Radha, and they're fully manifested according to our devotion. When Lord Chaitanya took a detour out of the way and went to Ramakeli, where Rupa and Sanatan were living. And when they came, there were millions of devotees from all the villages and all the towns that joined his kirtan. And this is a very wonderful story. The Nawab Hussain Shah outlawed any public demonstration of Hindu religion. And anyone who dared to do any puja or anything outside of their homes in secret, he would plunder them, he would punish them, he would imprison them. And here's Lord Chaitanya dancing in the middle of the street of the capital of the Nawab Hussain Shah in Ramkeli, with millions of people loudly calling out the holy name. When the Nawab Hussain Shah asked somebody, what's going on out there? One devotee, or one person, some of his servants, they said, there's this saint, a Hindu saint. He's a beautiful golden complexion. His arms are so long they extend below his knees. His eyes are like fully blossomed lotus flowers that practically come to his ears. And he's so beautiful. His nose is like a sesame flower. His lips are like the bimba fruit. And he's roaring out the holy names and he's dancing. And I cannot tell you how many tears are pouring from his eyes. It's like the Ganga constantly flowing, and everybody's crying and everybody's chanting, and I've never seen anything like this. He called a Keshava Khan, who was one of his ministers, who was a devotee. He said, who is this person out there? Keshava Khan knew he was Lord Chaitanya, and he didn't want the Nawab Hussain Shah to send the militaries, because what he was doing was totally against the law. He said, don't listen to all this rumors and gossip. He's just an ordinary beggar who's just coming, and don't pay attention to him. And then Nawab Hussain Shah said, how dare you commit such an offense? He's the supreme personality of Godhead. He's the absolute truth. He is my beloved Lord Allah. He's come in this form. In order for me to get anybody to follow me, I either have to punish them or I don't. If they don't, or I have to pay them. But he has all these people surrendering their lives completely to him, and he's not giving them anything. It's just his beauty. It's just his mercy. He's God. How dare you call him an ordinary beggar? I declare he could do anything he wants. So Rupa and Sanatan sent a message to Lord Chaitanya that he could change his mind anytime. But Lord Chaitanya was dancing so ecstatically. They had them for hours and hours and hours and days. Nobody could give them the message. But then Nityananda Prabhu somehow got Lord Chaitanya to stop the kirtan. And in the middle of the night, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Anupam, they secretly, incognito, they went to Lord Chaitanya and they surrendered their hearts, they surrendered their lives, and their prayers of the deepest, most genuine and pure love and humility. Sometimes Lord Chaitanya would say to Sanatan and Rupa, your humility is breaking my heart. What does it mean to break the heart of Krishna? Krishna's heart is the reservoir of all love. And Lord Chaitanya's heart is Srimati Radharani's heart. Her infinite love is there. It is described that the Pancha Tattva, they broke open the storehouse of Prema Bhakti and they tasted the nectar and distributed it. So when Mahaprabhu was saying, your humility is breaking my heart, means you've broken open my heart and all my love and all my mercy, everything is there for you. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it was his plan that Rupa and Sanatan come to Vrindavan to establish Vrindavan as a holy place. And it is by their mercy, Lord Chaitanya's mercy coming through the 6 Goswamis, that all of our acharyas, they all took shelter here in Vrindavan and Navadvip and Puri, and Srila Prabhupada opened the doors of Vrindavan to the whole world. Sanatan Goswami told Lord Chaitanya that going to Vrindavan with so many people, you will not be happy. Go alone or with a few. The power of Sanatan Goswami's devotion was so great. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was longing for years and years to come to Vrindavan, and finally he's on his way. He's already gone hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. He proclaimed, I'm going back to Puri. And when he returned to Puri, he told devotees that because I hurt the heart of Gadadhar Pandit by not allowing him to come, Krishna would not let me go to Vrindavan. If you hurt the hearts of devotees unnecessarily, even if you're here, you cannot really experience Vrindavan. It's a powerful lesson that Lord Chaitanya taught. And he said, unless Gadadhar Pandit from his heart of hearts gives me permission to go, I cannot. Krishna will not allow me to go. And when Gadadhar Pandit heard this, he became so humbled. He said, just come to my house for prasad and I'll be fully satisfied if I can cook for you and feed you. And then you are the supreme independent personality of Godhead. You may go to Vrindavan. On his next journey to Vrindavan, he went to Vrindavan, and on his way back to Puri, after 2 months here, he met Sanatana Goswami at Varanasi. Such historical event. He spoke for 2 months, for 60 days, throughout the day, every day. And I just heard a talk today in a Nectar of Devotion class where Srila Prabhupada describes at Prayag, Lord Chaitanya taught Rupa Goswami for 10 days. In Varanasi, he taught Sanatana Goswami for 2 months. And from here, he sent them to Vrindavan. And with the teachings and the mercy and the grace they received from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they have established our sampradaya. They have given us the books, they have given us the example of their life, and they have revealed the holy Dham of Sri Braja. After 2 months, Sanatana Goswami just wanted to go with Lord Chaitanya to Puri. How could you give up the association of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Rupa Goswami, by his own experience, realization, and knowledge, he revealed that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is more munificent than even Krishna. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for the sake of revealing Vrindavan for the world, he ordered Sanatana, you go to Vrindavan. You can come once to visit me in Puri. Rupa and Sanatana, on separate occasions, they both came to Vrindavan, they visited Puri, and then they came here to live the rest of their lives. Bhakti Raktakar describes Sanatana Goswami was roaming through the 12 forests, and when he was living in Mahaban, on the bank of Yamuna, he saw children playing. And there was one particular child that was playing with the little Brijabasi children, the villagers. And he charmed his heart in such a way he was enchanting. And the little child ran away, and Sanatana followed him, and he entered into a temple. And Sanatana went into the temple, and there was no one there. It was just the deity of Madan Gopal. And Sanatana Goswami understood that Madan Gopal was taking a little form just so he could play with the Brijabasi village children in Gokul. Later, of course, we know that Madan Gopal, who was discovered by Advaitacharya, later he was residing in a home in Mathura, and that Brahman, under Madan Gopal's direction, gifted the deity to Sanatana Goswami, who was living in Vrindavan at the Dwadas Aditya Til near the bank of Yamuna. And we have heard the beautiful story of how Sanatana Goswami was worshiping him under a tree and offering him the very best he had. And Madan Gopal, just under a tree in all seasons, was completely happy just being in the association of Srila Sanatana Goswami. And later, a wealthy man came and became his disciple and built the first major temple in Vrindavan, Shri Radha Madan Mohan. After some years, he entrusted the deity worship to his disciples, and he wandered through Vrindavan. And there are many stories, but I'd like to end tonight's narration with just a couple. Sanatana Goswami went to Nandagram, and there, at that time, Nandagram was very, very remote, and he lived on the banks of Pavana Sarovar. It was a very secluded forest. There was hardly anyone around. It was considered a dangerous forest. Sanatana Goswami being at Pavan Sarovar. This is the place in Krishna's eternal Leela that Nanda Maharaj and the cowherd men, they bring Krishna and Balaram to take their baths every day in the morning. It's the place where Krishna and Balaram bring their cows for drinking water. It's the place where Yashoda Mai arranges for Srimati Radharani and her Sakis to cook breakfast every day on the banks of Pavan Sarovar. Our Vedic Vaishnav literature has described so many beautiful pastimes of Radha Gopinath in Pavan Sarovar. Sanatana Goswami was living alone there. He was so absorbed in remembering the pastimes of Radha Gopinath, he practically never ate. Maybe for an hour or so a day he would sleep on the ground. One day, a very beautiful cowherd boy from the village came to Pavan Sarovar with a pot of milk, and he approached Sanatan. He said, "Nobody knows you're here. This is a very dangerous forest, and you don't have any place to live. You're just sleeping on the cold ground, and you don't have any food, and you're not even going to beg for food. The only reason I know you're here is I've been herding my cows, and I've seen you here. And let me tell you that if the Brijabasis find out that such a great saint like you is sleeping just on the ground in the forest, it will break their hearts, and it's breaking my heart. I brought you this milk. Please accept it. And please let us build a bhajan kutir for you to stay. That will make all of us, all the Brijabasis and myself, so happy." Sanatana Goswami just listened, and the little cowherd boy, he said, "I'll come back later and pick up the pot." The boy ran away. He said, "I have to go help my father milk the cows now." When Sanatana Goswami, all alone, drank that milk, something happened. That milk was Krishna's infinite, intimate, inconceivable love for his devotee in the form of milk. We read about how when the cows gave milk for Krishna, it was their ecstatic motherly love. That's what Krishna tasted. When Yashoda Mai fed Krishna her own milk, it was Krishna tasted her love. And here, Krishna is giving his love in the form of milk to Sanatana Goswami. Who is this Sanatana Goswami? When he tasted that milk, tears began pouring from his eyes. His hairs were standing on end. His limbs were trembling. His heart was flooding over with ecstatic love for Krishna. And by that experience, he understood that that little cowherd boy was Krishna. And Krishna's asking me to have a bhajan kutir. And then Krishna, knowing everything, he arranged the Brijabasis to come to Pavan Sarovar and build a nice, simple bhajan kutir for the happiness and the protection of Sri Sanatana Goswami. And Sanatana Goswami, simply for the pleasure of Krishna and the devotees, he accepted it. He would travel from village to village, and he became so dear to all the Brijabasis. When he would arrive at a village, he knew the whole village would come to the outskirts to greet him. They would be chanting the holy names of Krishna in Sankirtan, knowing how that pleased Sanatana Goswami. And he would ask, "How is your wife? How is your husband? How is your children? How is your parents? How is your cows? How is your crops? How is your health?" Such ordinary concerns and interactions, but they were filled with Vaishnav love and care. And in this way, he completely captured the hearts of all the residents of Vrindavan. He would stay the night and discuss Krishna with all the residents, and then the next morning, when he would leave, they would all be weeping and crying in separation and see him to the outskirts, and he'd go to the next village, and the same thing happened. In one village, they were so overwhelmed. They were begging and pleading and praying for Sanatana Goswami to stay an extra day. And he did. And to this day, the name of that village is the place he stayed an extra day. He came to make his residence at Chakaleshwar Mahadev, at Manasi Ganga, at Govardhan. He would write his transcendental literatures there, right beside the ancient all-merciful form of Lord Mahadev, Chakaleshwar. Sanatana Goswami and Lord Shiva had very intimate, loving relationship. Vaishnavanam yata Shambhu, the love between Vaishnavas, was personified. He would take one leaf at a time and put in a little fire to give enough light so he could continue writing his books, etching on palm leaves, letter after letter. At one time, there were huge blood-sucking mosquitoes that were tormenting him continuously. throughout the night. And Sanatana Goswami was willing to tolerate anything, anytime, but it was compromising his writing and his bhajan. So he decided to leave. When Chakaleshwar Mahadev understood that Sanatana Goswami was about to leave that place, the great Mahadev, he summoned the demigod who oversees all insects. And he ordered that demigod, I am holding you responsible that not a single mosquito ever comes to disturb Sanatana Goswami. And then Lord Shiva himself, Chakaleshwar Mahadev, disguised himself as a Brahmin and went to Sanatana Goswami and said, Goswamiji, please, I plead with you, stay one more night. If the mosquitoes bother you, go. But stay one more night. And they never came back. So he remained at Chakaleshwar Mahadev. And every day, Sanatana Goswami did Govardhan Parikrama. The Parikrama that we worship Govardhan is approximately 14 miles around. Sanatana Goswami would do the extended Parikrama, which includes places like Paita and Chandrasarovar. And it's 24 miles. He did that parikrama every day, completely absorbed in remembering Krishna's wonderful pastimes in each place. As a servant of Srimati Radharani, he was constantly immersed in chanting the holy names of the Lord. As he was growing older, it was very difficult, but he never considered even doing the smaller parikrama. But it was paining the heart of Govardhandhari Krishna to see him struggling so much every day. So one day again, Krishna had special leela with Sanatana Goswami. He disguised himself as a village cowherd boy, and by his Yogamaya potency, Sanatana Goswami could not detect him. The little boy came to Sanatana Goswami and said, Goswamiji, you are very old. You are struggling so hard to do this parikrama. You don't have to do it anymore. It's not necessary. And Sanatana Goswami was so humble. He said, I must do it every day because it is my service to Krishna. The little cowherd boy, he climbed to the top of Govardhan Hill and stood in his threefold bending form and played a flute. And as he played his flute, Govardhan Hill melted and Krishna's footprints entered into a stone. The cowherd boy came down. Sanatana Goswami didn't see that. He came down with the stone and said, Goswamiji, let me bring this to your bhajan kutir. Krishna carried that big rock all the way back to Chakaleshwar Mahadev and put it in Sanatana Goswami's kutir. And the boy said, if you circumambulate this Govardhan Shila 7 times, it is equal to doing the full parikrama of Giriraj. And it is my wish and my hope that you will do like this. Then the boy left, and Sanatana Goswami saw in the stone was Krishna's footprint, and also the footprint or the hoof print of a cow, and a print of Krishna's cowherd stick. And as he reflected, Krishna within his heart revealed that little boy was Krishna himself, who played the flute, who melted the rocks, and who carried that raft back for Sanatana Goswami. In his old age, every day the Brijavasis would come to meet him. He would bathe in Manasi Ganga, perform his puja, perform his worship. And one day, on the full moon, the Brijavasis came to offer their honor and worship to Sanatana Goswami, who they all considered his guru, their guru. And Sanatana Goswami was sitting silently, and they waited and waited and they waited. And when they looked closer, his life had departed from his body. Sanatana Goswami had disappeared from this material world. The Brijabasis were beside themselves in grief. They all came together, and all the 6 Goswamis, the 5 other Goswamis, and all the other Goswamis, they all came here to Chakaleshwar Mahadev to offer their worship and honor in the last rites of Sanatan Goswami. His body was brought back to Vrindavan besides Madan Mohan Temple. But in honor of Sanatan Goswami, all the Goswamis and all the Brijabasi throughout Brajdham, they performed Govardhan Parikrama because it is so dear to Sanatan Goswami. And the day of his disappearance is the Guru Purnima. Guru Purnima is the day that devotees and those who are followers of Sanatan Dharma worship their Guru, Vyasadev, the original Guru. But for the Brijabasis, Sanatan Goswami was their Guru. And to this day, as far as I understand, more people than even Govardhan Puja, the Brijabasis perform Govardhan Parikrama on the Guru Purnima in honor of worshipping Srila Sanatan Goswami. When Srila Prabhupada was in his last weeks, last days, he couldn't even sit up. His body was so frail. In that spirit of Sanatan Goswami, he asked the devotees to bring him on a bullock to perform the parikrama of Shri Giriraj Govardhan. Devotees pleaded with him, cried to him, begging him, please don't go, you cannot live. His doctor was there. He said, he will surely die. Nobody could survive in his condition because in those days there was no pavement like now. Was just pathway. And Srila Prabhupada's beloved godbrother, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Srila Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, seeing the emotions of the devotees, he appealed to Srila Prabhupada. And this is very important. Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj was one of Srila Prabhupada's dearmost friends and godbrothers. And many devotees, Shrutikirti Prabhu, Malati Devi, you may have witnessed the spontaneous, intimate, loving relationship they had with each other. The Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj told Srila Prabhupada when he saw the emotions that your devotees, they love you so much. And on the basis of the love of the devotees, Srila Prabhupada, he remained at Krishna Balaram Temple. But after his disappearance, the devotees took a murti of Srila Prabhupada on the Govardhan Parikrama. I'm sorry I went over time. I really didn't intend to, but we'll continue tomorrow. Thank you very much.